Okay, I think we can start now. Um,
Okay.
Eric, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. So I will take the screen real quick, and I just wanted to review some very nice accomplishments yesterday. And it is, in fact, not at all unrelated to today's topic anyways. But what we were able to do yesterday in a webinar that was involved me and Case, and then also you, Mariam, and others, was to basically go through the fair data point, in this case, the one that was launched at KIU, and to systematically work through each of the metadata records in the fair data point. And as a group, figuring out the answers that we want there, we put the answers in, and in the end, I think we successfully configured the fair data point at KIU. And what we have here are two catalogs that we set up yesterday. So again, at the highest level, we have the fair data point itself. And this is, it says here from the description, this is the fair data point, contains metadata of data sets and other artifacts related to COVID-19 pandemic and other health data in Kampala National University and the rest of Uganda. So we're at the highest level of the fair data point. You can see that metadata was originally issued on the 1st of July, but we modified it yesterday on the 13th of July. We still call this version 1.0. There's a link to the fact that we use the English language on this fair data point. There's a license, there's an institution, so KIU itself, and there's a start date and a last update and the institution country. So here's a link and a code to Uganda. And then here's a link to different formats for all of this metadata on this page. And this is different machine actionable ways of describing exactly what's on this page here. And at the fair data point, we have two catalogs. In this case, we built them yesterday. The first catalog is for COVID-19 case report forms. And this was always our original objective in Vote on Africa, is to show that we could capture case report information on COVID patients and have that in a fair format. We have another catalog that was entered by Dr. Mariam yesterday, which is migration media reports. So these are news reports in the popular press or in the media that report on migration issues. And so let me go ahead and I just want to show off you know, how we did this. If I go to the migrant media reports, we're now inside that catalog, and it says that these are national and international media reports published during the COVID-19 crisis. And again, there's a bunch of metadata here that we completed yesterday, including something called themes. And within the catalog here, there are data sets. And here's one data set called media report data sets. And these funny identifiers here are linking to these themes. So if we click on this one, for example, this is telling us what a news report is in the machine actionable way. So this is just giving us insight into the content of the data that's at this fair data point. So these are just kind of like keywords. But if I go into the media report data set, I don't immediately see the data set itself. What I see is a description here that these data sets are media reports related to the impact of the COVID crisis on immigrants in Tunisia. And there's now distributions. And a distribution is a little bit like a file type. So we could have this report in XML, we could have it as a Word document, we could have it in an Excel spreadsheet. In this case, it's in the form of a Google document. So if we click on the distribution for Google document, we get just that. It's a media report. This media report in Google document. And if I click on the access link, the actual access link, I get to the data set itself. This is the Google document. And this is just a listing now of these media reports. Now, what's nice about this example is that it's really a complete set of metadata, or a complete set of FAIR data that goes all the way from this very high level FAIR data point, but with a set of links and machine readable metadata, goes all the way to the data set itself. And so this would allow the machine and the human to much more easily find this data and to be able to recover it than if it was, for example, just a Google link sitting on somebody's browser window somewhere. You know, how do I find a Google document if I don't know that it exists, or that if I don't have access to the Google Drive where it was created? So here is a way that we can use a FAIR data point to link to that data. And then just real quickly, the case report form is the same thing. We have a catalog that then links into data sets. And if I go to the data set, I get to distributions. But in this case, we don't really have yet an example of the case report form in this RDF distribution. And that is something that we still need to do, but then it's really pretty much the last thing we need to do. And then we will also have a complete FAIR data point linking to case report form data, or at least we know how to do that then. And I will leave it at that because we have options on the horizon for creating these case report forms. One is the wizard tool that's being engineered into the FAIR data point, and that will be available in the coming weeks. But there's also the CEDAR templates, which may offer us another way of creating these forms, which we could also then link to as well. So with that, I will hand back the screen. Maybe I took a little more time than I wanted, but I thought it was really nice to demonstrate that we had a working FAIR data point. We've configured them with the appropriate metadata. And at least in the case of the migrant media reports, we actually link from the highest level metadata right down to the data set itself. So that's a pretty nice bona fide example of FAIR data. So Mariam, I hand it back to you.
Oh, thank you, Eric. Thank you for sharing with everyone. So next, I think we'll have Dr. Mariam from University of Sus. I can see she's on the call.
Yes. Hi, Mariam. Hi. Good evening, everyone. So can I share my screen?
Yes, sure. Dr. Mariam?
Okay, yes, I'm here.
Okay, you can start now.
Yes, okay. So in today's presentation, we'll present the experience of the Tunisia team about the use of the CEDAR platform. For this presentation, I planned to make a real demonstration but unfortunately, as you can see in this slide, the access for this morning was difficult, unfortunately. So I will present some screenshots that I took before this problem. The next slide, please. Let's start now by reminding that what is CEDAR. CEDAR refers to the Center for Expanded Data, Annotation and Retrieval. It was established to create a computational ecosystem for development, evaluation, use, and refinement of biomedical metadata. The approach of the CEDAR platform is based in the use of the metadata templates. And these templates will include controlled terms and synonyms for specific data elements. To join the CEDAR platform, you can use the link in below. The next slide, please. So there are 6 main options offered by CEDAR. The creation of forms. We can collaborate by sharing some forms. We can submit metadata, and we can update a different version of the templates that we create. So to summarize, we have, as we saw it before in the training session, there are 3 steps that we can perform with CEDAR. The first one is to create or to find a metadata form. The second one, we have to enter the metadata in the form created. And the third one, we have to copy or to submit or to publish the metadata in a target location or repositories. In this presentation, we will focus on the first step. We can, the next slide, please. So for the first step that we have to create a template, I have at first to precise some specificity for the Tunisian VODAN project. The Tunisia Fair data point contains the metadata of datasets related to the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on health, social situation, or mobility status of migrants. There are 2 catalogs. The first one will contain, as we mentioned before, the national and international media reports published during this period of a crisis. And the second one will be the transcribed interviews conducted among migrants in Tunisia. In this stage of the project, we started by the creation of the form of the media reports. And our data is collected, please, Mariam, the next. Our data are collected until now in a Google Doc, as you can see in this slide. But we decide, in the next, we decide to switch to an Excel sheet, as you can see here. We specified the main metadata that we have to extract from the media reports. For example, we can cite, for example, we can specify the country of the event, the type of the events, is it a health event or a movement or a social, and the different actors that are related in the article. Then, given that we didn't find an existing form or template for the CEDAR repository that meet the goal of our work, we try to create a form specific to our research. So an account in CEDAR was created, as you can see in this picture. Next. In this slide, we present the aspect of the workspace in CEDAR. And each template that will be created will contain, please, the next. Mariam, please, the next slide. Before, no.
On?
No, before it. Yes. So each template, as I said, will be contain some fields. And there are three goals for the CEDAR metadata template. The first one was we have to define the template questions or fields. The second, we can also make an order in the questions. And at final, we can describe the template artifact with specifying the name, the provenance, or the dates of creation or of the update of the different version of the template. Now, let me see how we can build a basic metadata template. For this, we will start by clicking on the new button, as you can see in this picture, on the workspace view, and we will select the option template in the drop-down menu. So a new window, please, Maria, will appear, and we have to start by providing a human-readable label, a unique identifier, and a description of what the template resource represents. So for the name, we have to choose a title, and we are not obliged to append the term template or form to this title. Then the identifier, it refers to an external identifier. And next, we have the description. The description, which can be a sentence, it can be also a paragraph that describes the subject that the template is documenting. After specifying these items, we can save and close the template, and we can return to it later. In our case, we gave the name of Vodan, COVID Migrants Tunisia, for our template. Now we have to move to the next step, which is how we can add fields. There are two ways for this, but for this presentation, we will focus in the second way, which is how to define a field with an element resource or a template resource. So at first, we have, for the definition of the field, we have to choose the type of the field. So for this, we can use the vertical selector at the upper right of the template designer. And there are 4 common field types. The text, we can add a date, a mail, or a numeric variable or field. And when we click on the 3 dots icon in the vertical selector, we can have other types of fields, such as the link, a multiple choice, a pick from a list. Please, the next. So, the next, yes. However, please, can you return? Yes. However, we have also the option to customize our presentation of the template. So we can add an image, or we can also make different sections for our template. Then for each data entry field type, CEDAR supports certain options. The common options are required, multiple, and value relations. And for further information, you can read the CEDAR user guide. And as you can see in the next slide, there are there are a list of the different field type, and we have to choose the most appropriate one for our data. An important thing that I have to precise in this stage is how to use the controller terms according to bioportal ontology. For this, we have to click in the presented button, and we have to, then the next, we will have the opportunity to choose the most appropriate term for the name that we have selected for our field. For example, for this example, we have the name of the field event date, and the system proposed different definition and sources of this definition related to this term. Really, so we have to select the appropriate one, and the system will consider this choice. The next. Really, in this step, I have to mention that we have some difficulties to choose the appropriate term, because the system proposes a large list of definition. So if it is possible, a further explanation is desirable. So the specification of the terms according to bioportal is also recommended for the text field when we have to choose the values that we have to attribute to this field. It's an example for the specification of terms according to the values of the text field. Now, after completing the creation of the template, we can save this template when we click in this button, and we can also then view that we can also note that the template created was added to the workspace, as you can see in this slide. Then we have the option also to get an overview of the template when we choose the option Visit Open View, as it is presented in this slide. After completing the creation of the data of the template, we can start by entering the metadata. And for this, we have to choose the option Popular in this list, and then we have the opportunity. Please, the next. Unfortunately, I can't present the view of our case, but we can see the example of the case report form of the WHO presented in the platform of CEDAR. Then, after finishing the entry of metadata, we will note that the metadata was added to our workspace, and this is the screen just to present the RDF form that was created and related to the metadata, an example of metadata. As you can see, there are other options presented by the CEDAR. We can rename the template or the metadata. We can copy it. We can share it with other members of the team. Finally, we can submit, so we can publish this template or metadata when we use the the option of published version. That's all. It was a brief presentation of the CEDAR platform. I hope that I can present the real demonstration about our case, but unfortunately we have the technical problem. So I hope that was clear, and I think that we can continue to explore other options of the CEDAR platform. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Mariam. So does anyone have any questions for Dr. Mariam? Going once, twice, okay.
Oh, well, I could just maybe mention that in the case of, this is Eric, by the way, here, and we showed the example of the fair data point at the top of the hour here, and the catalog that we had for case report form is really an empty catalog. We don't have an example data set for either a real patient or a mock patient yet. But it seems to me that we are very close to maybe using the CEDAR form that Mariam just showed now as a way to create maybe a series of mock data sets that we could load into the KIU fair data point. And then that would also begin to show kind of a complete closure here on going from metadata all the way down to the data set itself. So I maybe offer that as a suggestion that we could create some artificial mock data for the CRF, and then we could maybe begin to experiment with it in the fair data point. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. I think that's, that sounds brilliant. I actually had some real COVID-19 data, but I'm still waiting for the approval to be able to use it. So I don't know if it would be okay to use it without the consent first. What would you advise, Eric?
Well, indeed, that's a bit of a discussion. You know, one question would be, in what form is the data? Is it really fair format, or is it something that's maybe just in a PDF format? So that's one thing.
Okay. It's kind of like a URL, right? And then you basically, okay, I got the login credentials, so I can basically log in, but the Excel sheets, but I cannot import them. So I'd manually imported some of the data.
Okay.
But I'd not yet started using it because I don't have the consent yet.
Yeah.
Do you think if we depersonalize it and take out the names, that would that be okay?
Well, I think it's a bigger discussion to have with the hospital or the data owners. So that's something I think to maybe schedule meetings for and go into it in detail, because it's a very sensitive data related issue. But it sounds very promising that once we have those meetings, we will then be able to, I think, work in a very straightforward way to get that onto the fair data point.
Okay. So I think we can have the next presentation now. So I'll stop sharing my screen. So Engineer Elijah will be presenting on behalf of the Nigerian team. Elijah.
Hello, good afternoon, Mariam.
Good afternoon.
As for the IBBU team, we only have a local deployment currently running. If you can share the screen of IBBU computer 2.
You can take over you can share your screen.
Okay. I'll be with you in a minute.
Oh, I was seeing your screen before, but not anymore.
Yes, I'm trying to share the screen.
Okay. Yes, I can see the screen now.
For the IBBU team, we are able to actually have a local deployment currently running. And though we've not been able to do much in filling the form, we've only been able to carry out the initial page. We've only been able to fill the initial page of the tier data point. And as you can see from my screen, the initial page is what we have, where we have our IBBU tier data point. From the webinar we have yesterday, we are supposed to carry on from there to create our catalog, at the same time to create the data set from the webinar we had yesterday. Hopefully today we are going to go ahead with what we need to do. Though Dr. Sekinat raised a question yesterday that if we have a local deployment ongoing and we feel all our data can it be transferred to the cloud, and the question that the answer that came yesterday was actually that for now that function has not been enabled yet. So we are a little bit dragging feet that when we are able to do our production deployment, we can move all our data there. Miriam, are you there with me?
Yes, I'm here. Okay.
So that is the challenge why we have not actually gone ahead from this point. because we are trying to have our production deployment ongoing before what is required from us.
Sorry, what are your challenges? What challenges are you facing with getting to the production deployment stage?
The challenge we actually face currently in the production deployment has to do with when we run our code, it brought out a prompt. Though I was discussing with Namobi on how to solve the challenge we currently encounter.
Sorry, I didn't get the challenge.
The challenge I had is when I run the first line of code on Docker Composer Prezi.
Mm-hmm.
It brought out a point that Docker Compose up in Docker Compose up .yml line 17 column 13 could not be find expected, and also line 19 column 5, which I discussed with Namobi.
Okay.
Yes, and we are trying to actually solve the challenge in the lines of code.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Elijah, for the updates.
Thank you, Miriam.
So we actually still have a few more minutes, about 10 minutes left. So in case anyone has a question or an addition to anything that has been mentioned, I can see.
Yes, Dr. Sekinat Follow-Strong here.
Yes, Dr. Sakina.
Yes. I just want Eric, in just some simple language, the relationship between CEDAR and FDP. How do we make them together? What is the relationship? I just want to get it very, very clear. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And it's something that we're really focused on now here in the development group in Leiden. The configuration that we did yesterday with the fair data point was essentially answering 32 questions, yeah, for each of these layers of the fair data point. And that's really the core metadata of the fair data point itself. And then as time goes on, we may want to create additional metadata components that may not be covered in the fair data point core metadata. So we may want to say other things about our data that are not easily recorded in these 32 questions. So what that means is that we could, for example, go to a platform like CEDAR, and we could use that platform to create additional metadata templates or schema that we can create, we can share them, people can use them and begin to capture these additional metadata. And what we would do then is extend the core model of the metadata in the fair data point with these additional CEDAR templates, for example. So yeah, where we are right now is the fair data point is in itself incredibly handy. It does some things that are really fair, but it's still pretty minimal. And if we want to add additional metadata components, what we need to do is figure out a way to extend the existing metadata with these other components. And we're working on that now in Leiden. And I think we'll have answers this week or next on how we want to begin doing that. Does this answer your question, Sakana?
So I can go ahead and create a CEDAR component for Nigeria. Hello?
Sakina, I think we lost you for a second. What did you say?
Okay, I said that the explanation is okay, so I can go ahead and create a CEDAR point for Nigeria.
Yes, okay, that's good.
Okay, now the CEDAR, is it like the FDP that we have many points, or is it just one CEDAR template for the whole country?
This would be a decision that we would make, you know, at some level. We make this decision together in the vote on project. So, you know, the fair data point comes with some standard metadata components, these 32 questions, and anything else that we want to extend, we then have to have an agreement in this project. You know, how does that look? Does that become part of the vote on project in that everyone should comply with that? Or at what point do we allow different countries or different institutions to supply their own additional metadata? So these are questions that we need to ask and then answer for ourselves in the context of the project.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm okay now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I saw someone else raise their hand. I'm not sure who it was. Was it Ibrahim? Or
Sorry, Mariam.
Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon.
oh, good afternoon, Ibrahim.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. I was just asking a question, or I was thinking about something. With the experiences we have just encountered, particularly in IUB University in Nigeria here, if we can have other partners that will share the experiences, particularly people using the Windows platform, because down around here is one of the most common platforms we're using. And we see as the work progresses, there will be the need for us to also extend our experiences with other colleagues, particularly when we have to go around talking to the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health and get this data and other things. So to get a very smooth sailing, I think we will require other people if they can share their experiences, particularly people that work on Windows platform. Thank you.
Indeed, and I would just like to emphasize that the experience of getting the fair data point up and running on a Windows platform would be very valuable as a document to share. So for those of you who have been working with the Windows platform and are having some success, I think it's really important that you can record your experience, what you've done, how you got it to work, and that you can share that more easily than with your colleagues here. Indeed, if we see a lot of Windows platforms in certain countries or in African countries, then we really need to build some documentation and training materials for the Windows platform.
okay, thank you. Dr. Mariam, were you
Yes.
saying something?
Yes, Mariam, thank you. I have just a question about the controller terms that we have to use when we are making the CEDAR template. So can we have a sample way or to choose the appropriate terms, especially when we look to the CEDAR list that are proposed for some terms, we have different sources of these terms, and they are in the majority of cases biomedical terms. And in our case, we have not we have in our case about the metadata about migrant. We are not especially for biomedical terms. We have also terms related to social or social problems or movement or security. So how we can do with this problem?
Yes, maybe I can answer that. This is a very typical problem that people face in making FAIR data. FAIR originally really kind of got going, or let's say the thinking about how to make data more machine interoperable was really driven a lot by the biomedical use case. And I think this is just because biology is itself very complicated. There's lots of proteins and genes and drugs and diseases and phenotypes. So very early on, we were forced to get very clear about our terminology and to make it machine actionable. But what that means is that there's a lot of other disciplines out there that don't necessarily have ready terminology systems to go and to be of use. So two things I would say to answer here. One is that we can certainly try to look on the internet and do a search for controlled terminologies that might be useful. And there's places we can go to begin that search. There's registries of ontologies, and there are other places to go that we can look for these things. The second option is that we may have to actually create our own controlled terminology, at least for some terms. And if that's the case, then there are also methods by which we can try to set up our own controlled vocabulary, or we can try to augment an existing vocabulary with additional terms that we would like to have. So these are all ways forward. They take time and some energy. These are additional meetings that we would probably have to have, but all these things are possible. And once we get clarity on what these new terms are, we can first do a search. And if we don't find what we're looking for, we can start thinking about creating them ourselves. So that's kind of the big answer. To get into more detail, I think we have to kind of go offline together and figure that out.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Kuda had a question as well.
Thank you,
Kuda.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me? Hello. Okay.
Kuda. Oh, I think he had to.
Hello.
Yes. We can hear you now.
You can hear me now. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My question was, if we're choosing to develop on existing platforms like the CEDAR or Dreamweaver or Photoshop, how best are we going to manage the issues of security? Because some of the data we require may be licensed, but we are using an application from somebody. How do we manage security so that we don't compromise the security of our data? Hello?
Yeah. So I am not by any means a security expert, and there are people out there who can give much better advice on this question. But I think we can also ask, you know, at what level are we operating, and when do we need security, and when do we actually want to maybe be sharing our assets in an open way? And so what I mean by that is, if we create a metadata template, that's a schema that other people can reuse. And we would encourage, I think, that we would get as much reuse as possible on that. And in that case, there's really no security issue. It's really a matter of getting our new schema, our new template, available for others to see and to use. However, once that metadata template is used to create metadata or data, then there may be sensitivity issues there, privacy issues that require more security. And then we really need to make sure that when we create those metadata instances, that data is protected according to the laws and to the regulations of that institution. So we can, I think in this project in Vote on Africa, we sometimes create products that we want to share very broadly. And then at other times we create data that's very privacy sensitive and, you know, really needs to be regulated quite heavily. But when we just use an application such as CEDAR or Dreamweaver or Photoshop, yeah, I think there's always a level of trust as to whether or not you trust this software or this company or the source of the software. And yeah, these are security related issues that I think there's other people who comment better than I. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I've answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I see we're now running out of time. It's actually time up for us. But in case anyone else has a question, we could do it real quick, 1 or 2. Otherwise, I think this is the end of our webinar. Thank you very much, Eric, Ivy, our presenters for the day, and everyone for attending. I hope everyone has a lovely afternoon or evening.
Great, thank you, Mariam. Have a good day.
You too, Eric. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Have a good
Bye,
day.
everyone.
Thank you, Mariam and
Thank you, Mariam.